What's up, everybody? This episode of Drunk Black History is sponsored by the Cappy. As summer turns to fall and we try to enjoy those last precious moments outdoors before the weather turns bad, it's important to keep your favorite canned beverages safe from bees, flies, and mosquitoes at your weekend barbecue. And that, my friends, is where the Cappy comes in. With a 4.7 out of 5 rating on Amazon, earning the distinction of an Amazon choice, the Cappy is the simple tool you need to keep your beverages safe and the party going. An attachment that fits directly onto the can tab on top of nearly every canned beverage, the Cappy first helps you to open the can itself, eliminating all those broken fingernails, and then rotates around with the can tab, creating a seal over the opening of the can, keeping any pests out while also keeping the carbonation in, helping your beverage stay fresher longer. The Cappy also helps prevent any would-be felons you may encounter out there from slipping anything into your drink too, making the Cappy a small price to pay for a bigger peace of mind. We've left a link in the show notes. Or the Cappy on Amazon today. What's up, everybody? This is Brandon Collins with another episode of Drunk Black History. Today we have a very special guest, Johan the American. How you doing, bro?
Yes, sir. It's me.
That's right. Now
I don't have to be loud here, right?
No. This is a studio, bro. It's the whole setup. Shout out to LV Film Pro House.
It's my first time outside.
For today?
No, I'm talking shit. Today, yeah, technically, yeah.
Okay. By the way, it's LV Pro Film House.
LV.
We've already been drinking, folks. Shout out to our sponsor, Equiano Rum, who's been sponsoring Drunk Black History the past few events and everything like that. You are also the co-host of Conceitednobodi. Tell the people about your podcast, sir.
Yes, big shout out to Conceitednobodi. I'm one half of Conceitednobodi. It's Red Wanda and Johan the American each and every Wednesday at 7 a.m. Everybody is a conceited nobody. We all have opinions. And our show tries to do a job of highlighting those opinions, you know?
Yeah, I've done it a bunch of times. Yeah, it's
Appreciate
a fun time, man.
Thanks for having me, though.
Of course. You always come to the shows, the live shows that we have in New York City. I've always appreciated your support on that. And you know a lot about history, bro. Has that always been a thing for you? Like, you know about world history, black history,
Yo, you gotta know about history being black in this world. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but was it something you naturally took to, or is it something that your family supported or something like that?
Yeah, I'm Haitian. I'm born in America, but my family is Haitian, right? Okay. And Haitian people are just very political. You just hyper aware of what's going on and where you've been, where you're from. The old adage, you gotta know where you've been to know where you're at. I know where you're at to know where you're going. Yeah. So they're just very big on just being aware. You know. Okay. So I try to stay informed, and I like history too. Like history, the storytelling of it.
Yeah, me too.
You know, so for sure.
Okay, I know you read a lot of history books and stuff like that. What would you say is the most profound Black history book you've ever read?
Wow. All right, so the two that come off the top of my head, Black Fortunes, I was telling you about earlier, by Shamari Willis. And another one, Prince of Darkness. Okay. Story of Jeremiah Hamilton. His first black millionaire coming out of New York. First black Wall Street millionaire coming out of New York. Excellent read. Both of those were great. So that's the first two I can really think of.
All right. Thank you for those recommendations, man. Yeah. It's always dope when I get to talk to people who are really about Black history, who know a lot of stuff, who you can have conversations with, because sometimes it can be a bit frustrating to talk to people who are they don't know anything about Black history,
right?
And then also they don't want to know anything. They don't really care. You know what I mean? And that can be frustrating because, you're right. We need to know our history. We need to know where we came from, the people that were pioneers before us, and know that this shit's been done before. You just don't hear about it.
Yeah, have you ever heard of I think it's the 1619 Project? Mm-hmm. Right. So in the first few paragraphs, right, it's something that the person writes. It's the first time a black body was taken off the continent of Africa, a new ethnic group was born, right? Because whether you're from the Americas, the Caribbeans, and you were an enslaved person, we have our trauma, first of all, bonds us, right? Mm-hmm. So we have that unified trauma, but also
that's why we always give the universal head nod.
Right, where you go.
No matter where you at.
Listen, niggas know.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, but you also have the culture, because we all from that West African region, and even though we were separated and divided by language and landmass, there's still roots in our culture. When you look at Black American food, when you look at Haitian food, you look at Jamaican food. Matter of fact, if you take all those cultures and put them together on a dinner table, everything slaps. You know what I mean? Black Americans make the best mac and cheese. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Nobody else. Jamaicans, I'm
know
sorry.
My family's looking forward to my mac and cheese this year. That's the thing they always look forward to.
Slaps.
Yeah, man.
Jamaicans make good jerk chicken.
Of course. I mean, that'd be wild if they didn't.
You know what I mean? Haitians with the rice. You know,
And oxtail.
oxtail. They do make good oxtail too. But I do like
my ex-girlfriend, her mom, she's Haitian. Except her mom used to make bomb-ass oxtails. Like, Jamaicans, obviously, oxtail, fantastic. But,
Right.
man, I think it was maybe the leaf she used. She used a lot of...
the green leaf with the lima beans and shit.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oxtail is definitely a showstopper for me. Like, oh, man, where we go?
It's so expensive now.
Huh?
It's so expensive now.
It is expensive.
Wait,
Somebody told... cheers.
Cheers.
I'm drinking. I already had like 2 shots. I'm lit a little bit.
That's how it's supposed to be, man. I mean, the plus size, we're talking about a fairly uplifting story. It's not like one of those sad... A lot of the stories in our history are very sad.
And I like, it's like, that's one of the reasons why for me, because when we get history in school, everything is told from like almost the glasses half full, right? So like, you hear the story about people being enslaved and it's a horrible situation. But also on the back end of that, I'm hearing a story of perseverance of a people that survived 300 years of atrocities. You know what I mean? And not only did they survive, they were able to hold on to parts of their culture and pass on tradition. You know what I mean? And slavery ended in the U.S. You could say 1864, and then Emancipation Proclamation, and then Juneteenth, a couple years later, and then you have Jim Crow, then you have segregation, and then so civil rights is 1964, right? 100 years later, and then in less than 100 years, we put a president up. You know what I mean? So like, it's still that same story of the people that were pulled from West Africa. And the reason why they pulled us from West Africa is because that was one of the most richest, most powerful areas in the world at the time. You're talking about like Mansa Musa. It's that 1400s time period is around the Mansa Musa time period, right? So you think about Mansa Musa being the richest person of all time. He was rich because of the people that he was with, you know what I mean? So those people supported that wealth and did what they had to do. That's us. Because then the Europeans was like, oh, these niggas know what they doing. Let's go snatch these folks and bring them over here.
They always stealing our shit. They always looking at what we doing, like, what's cool? What's dope? What's hip? Okay.
Right. That's always been the case. So
TikTok.
That's why I do the history. Yeah. To tell like to get a different like narrative.
Well, yeah, it's also like, I don't know what kind of where did you grow up?
Southside.
Okay.
Queens, Jamaica.
Okay, yeah. So you're around black folks. Did you have black teachers?
Yeah, funny story about that, right? So I definitely have black teachers.
Okay.
My English teacher in 7th grade was Pharaoh Monch's mom. Pharaoh Monch came to school one time. Nobody knew Pharaoh Monch was Pharaoh Monch. You know what I mean? And it was definitely Miss Rubens. It might be Pharaoh Monch. Yeah, Pharaoh Monch. Either Pharaoh Monch or Mos Def. Yeah, you know what I mean? It's one of those two.
Those are different. Those are very
definitely
different.
two different. But but it was like in my mind, this is like almost 20 years ago.
Okay.
But more than 20 years ago. But he came to the school. I think it was Pharaoh Monch because I remember in this conversation I had with this girl, and I'm like, "Oh shit, it's Pharaoh Monch in the hallway." I'm like, "Oh," and she's like, "Oh, my son's outside. Hold on, guys." And at the time, he was just coming up. You know what I mean? And I think Mos Def was just coming up too in that time period. That's why I get him confused. And then they were like, "Oh, who's that?" And I'm like, "Pharaoh Monch." Oh no, and you know what I mean? They had that song, and he was rapping on it, and like the class goes crazy, like, "Ah!" Everybody realized who he was and shit, but. Definitely in junior high was predominantly black. My elementary school was a little mixed. Okay. And then my high school was predominantly Latino, white Latino. And then I actually, because I also struggled with like self-esteem during that time period too. Just being a darker skinned person in the 90s, it was a lot of like name calling. So
yeah, if you weren't Wesley Snipes, you were having issues.
And Wesley was like late in the 90s. So before Wesley, it was rough. Okay. It was rough. We ain't had no Tyrese. You know what I mean? It was tough out here. Yeah. So 5% actually the one that really started me on the journey of understanding my blackness.
Oh, okay.
God Body was a big deal back then. So I had became God Body for a little bit, a short period.
Okay. Good. The reason why I asked that is because also the way that history is taught could also influence you to think that it's a priority, or also like, I'm gonna move on. Like I got other stuff that's more important to learn about, or the way that the school's structured, they're emphasizing this over this. And growing up in Ann Arbor, Michigan, like history was very much glossed over. It was like the easiest class because the teachers were just like, yeah, this happened, that happened. Let's watch a movie, and that's it. You know what I mean? Like, I think one of my history teachers in grade school showed us Cool Runnings as like a history lesson. You know what I mean? Like
back in the day,
but never actually added additional context. He just showed us this Disney-fied movie,
was like,
and you're thinking, oh, that's how it really went down. It's like so much missing from that story, and like other stories that are adapted into movies and stuff like that. It's
I have to shout out my moms because I hate saying my mom was super black. Like, she didn't celebrate Thanksgiving on Thursday because she said it was some bullshit. Okay. She didn't really fuck with Christmas like that because she was like, yo, it's some bullshit. Yeah. None of the holidays. That's why today, like, I don't do a lot of holidays. You know what I mean? So, and my mom's was very adamant about understanding, like, who we were, And when Haitian people are matriarch. So, in passing down the traditions and as a young boy, just being like, yo, you are black. This is, where your people are from. This is X, Y, Z. So, when I went into school, junior high school, my junior high school teacher, should I say his name?
If you want to.
Nah, maybe I shouldn't.
Okay.
Because he was an alcoholic and he's coming to school drunk.
Oh, yeah, don't say that. Just in case he's still, I don't think he's still teaching, right?
Not the way he was drinking. I don't know.
Jesus.
That liver Ben gave out. You know what I mean?
How did you know he was an alcoholic?
You used to smell him.
Oof.
You know how some people have a look at this?
Oh, yeah.
He would reek. Like, he would come into class and you be in the classroom from the middle of the room, you could smell the alcohol. He smelled like a bomb. You know what I mean? But he taught that history like a motherfucker though.
He was like fucking. You ever see that movie Half Nelson with Ryan Gosling?
No,
this nigga was doing crack like while he was like before he would teach and shit.
Okay.
One of his students like finds him at one point. It's like the catalyst for the movie. She finds him like when he's high on crack in like a bathroom.
Damn.
Yeah, it's a wild.
Was
movie.
he a good teacher though?
Yeah.
I mean, the crack make you teach good. I don't. Should we?
Well, that's the trauma. That's there's different things that allow you to cope.
Yeah.
And obviously for the show we call it Drunk Black History, like drinking stuff like that. But it's more of a ability to loosen up and be more honest about where we came from, why maybe we don't know or other people may not know about the subject we're talking about and stuff like that. But also to be honest about like, yeah, this shit sucks sometimes, like, or this shit hurts, and being vulnerable and like talking about the shit that we've gone through as a people.
Right.
It's been a long road and we're still fighting. Like, it's an election year and stuff like that. And what I was most impressed by with the subject you chose for tonight, for our recording, is that you immediately like knew what you wanted to talk about. Because we were like, after the last live show for Juneteenth, you were like, yo, I would love to come on. I was like, well, who would you talk about? And you were like, immediately you said
Hannah Elias.
And I was like, who's that? And then you broke down her story like in very piecemeal way, but I was like, holy shit. And you knew like off the top of the dome like all of her legacy. Right. So how'd you come about Hannah?
Oh, I'm always culturally, for us black people, and people might light me on fire for this, but we're a matriarch, right? So like I generally look at the women in a lot of like white supremacy has a great way of turning everything upside down, right? They flipped the map, right?
Yep.
They said that these people were better than these people, and
white male supremacy, I would say too, because it negates the contributions of women.
And I was like, and it also tells you that women aren't as important.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
They're the ones that brought us into this. So fucking crazy.
So I like to go, when I look at history, I like to look at the women because there's always almost like a hidden figure in the women and what they're doing and X, Y, Z. Because a lot of times, because it is like such a patriarchal world, like that story is never being told. Like our story isn't being told, but the black woman story is most definitely never being told.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So when I found her, it was like, oh shit, you know what I mean? And you guys hear the story, but she did a lot for Harlem and New York.
And how'd you come about her story? Was it in the book that you
Black
mentioned?
Fortunes, Shamari Willis.
Got it.
Yeah. And he writes it. It's almost like you would think like he would have like the names and write about them, and the names and write about. No, he writes it in the years. So you have to like read the entire book in order to get like the stories for everybody.
Okay.
So
does it bring it together in a
oh yeah,
it
brings it because the black elite in the 1800s, because some of this story is done, some of the story is done pre-Civil War, right?
Yeah.
What portion that we're doing, like Jeremiah Hamilton, is from the 1800s, like 1804, 1805. Right,
yeah.
She's born. Hannah Elias is born 1865.
Yep.
So this is 1 year outside of the Civil War and Emancipation Proclamation, right? And
talk about timing,
right?
Talk about timing, man, because that's a big thing too.
First year out. I mean, you're born that first year doing the thing. So it's
and her family, her parents were pretty in a pretty good position too. Like her dad owned the catering company, right?
Her dad owned a catering company, and that really speaks to like the household that she grew up in, right? Because when you think about a people that her parents had to be of age, right? They were parents. Let's say people were having kids young back then. So let's say her parents were like in their 20s, right? Maybe, right? They were definitely born slaves.
Oh yeah,
right. So these people were born in the absolute worst of situations, and one day somebody came up to them and said, "Hey, you're free. You ain't gotta do this no more." And a lot of people during that time struggled to earn, right? Because it wasn't like you got off the plantation, you were able to go down to the workforce one and get a job or some shit.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. A lot of people were just
they were on the street.
They were all just staring at each other like, what do we do?
Some of them wanted to go back because it was like, how am I going to eat? Where am I going to stay? You know, if I'm no longer an enslaved person, I didn't have the best, shack, but I had a shack.
Yeah, and didn't have education. I don't know. Like, a lot of them didn't have life skills outside of what they used to do.
This is what they knew. So they became sharecroppers. They kind of like went back to what it was. And this family said, no, we're going to do something different. We're going to like open up a business. We're going to sell food. Yeah. And that really, for me, like opens up who she becomes as a person. Like, 'cause growing up in that household, it was no, you figure the parents was on their shit. Like, they wasn't playing no games.
Yeah, I mean, she was educated. I mean, she was one on 9 kids, right?
One of 9. They was doing some serious fucking back then, yo.
Well, yeah.
9 kids?
Wouldn't you be fucking?
I mean, for sure. For sure. But after 4, 5, I'm going to be like, all right, Martha.
Oh, yeah. I mean, 9's insane.
Yo,
especially in 1865.
My guy was even trying to pull out. Like, did you?
I don't even know if that was like thought of as a method back then.
Had to be. They was pulling out in the Bible. What you mean?
Do you think they knew back in 1800s like how babies were created?
1,000%. What?
I just wonder how you knew the science to do that. Like, how do you figure out? Okay, you came in this person, and then 9 months later, there's a human. Like, it's just, you know what I mean? The reverse engineering you have to do as a scientist to figure that out. It's just very interesting to me.
Well, I mean,
I'm not gonna do the research because that's kind of nasty. But
some of that stuff, like we've learned more in detail, but at a grander scheme, it goes back all the way to the I hate saying the Egyptians because that's not their original name, but the people that were there before the current occupiers of Egypt. You know what I mean?
The pharaohs.
Yeah.
And, Brendan Fraser and the Mummy and stuff like that. Yeah.
Before Arabs came in and conquered Egypt, you feel me? Like those people, they knew.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What it was.
Yeah, fertility was a big thing. Like, there's fertility gods and stuff like that.
1,000%.
So, you don't talk about fertility unless you know about
and also
procreation and stuff like that.
Like when you think about like African culture and what we know of it, unless you're going there or you're speaking to an elder and getting a translation, you're kind of like being spoon fed from a system. You know what I mean? So it's like, yo, if you go to, I'm going to Africa this year, but like one of those things in chasing history, I want to hear it from the mouth of the person to be like, yo, what's the oral history? What's this about? Like, what happened over here in these years? Because this shit ain't new.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, all this shit is replayed.
Yeah, I think that's why I appreciate you because you're very inquisitive. You know what I mean? You have a growth mindset. You're always like, how can I learn from this thing? You're still doing that.
That's just for sure. As long as we alive, bro. You know what I mean?
You'd be surprised, man. I know so many people, and this is why, like, I feel like my friend circle's gotten smaller over the years because there's so many people that are like, I'm done learning anything new, or like, I don't want to get outside my comfort zone. Or be in a place where this is where I love about the audience that comes for Drunk Black History is that people are open to being vulnerable and saying, I didn't know that, or I don't know that, or I got that wrong. Right. I thought it was this thing, and actually it's this thing.
Right.
And I think we need to do more of that. You know what I mean? And that's what's dope about like learning about someone like Hannah is that, she was going one way, and then because of timing and opportunity, she's able to pivot and then help out people. And like, even when people were coming at her about like, oh, you used to do this thing and stuff, she's like, whatever. I'm just gonna focus on helping my people,
right? And
we're gonna flip the script on some of y'all. So like, before we like get to what that is, like, let's talk about like how she got started and everything like that. Like, she was raised by her parents,
raised by her parents,
9 children.
Sister's getting married one day, right?
Yeah.
And I'd imagine it's back in the day. Her parents were well-to-do in the neighborhood, so these was like Cambria Heights. Well, All right, so you're not from Queens, right? But like,
I know what Cambria Heights is, though.
All right, so these were Cambria Heights type niggas. You know what I mean? Real bullshit. You know, big shout out to Cambria Heights.
22 years, man.
I mean, that's a nuanced thing. You know what I mean? I just be like,
I'm also black. And I went to Queen. I went to St. John's. So
you did go to St. John's. Yeah. My bad. So these folks were pretty well known. So their daughter's getting married. Everybody in the town was talking about it. She shows up in a dress that everybody says was amazing. It was the rave, right? Her employer, which was an older white woman, because I think she was a domestic, another very common job for people during that time period. Her employer heard the story and figured, right? Because the book doesn't say that she confirmed, and figured she must have stole that dress from me, and sent the cops to go get her. Cops was like, yo, she couldn't show or prove where she got the dress from, or the judge didn't believe her. And she ended up doing like 3 months behind that, her first stint.
Yeah, she went to prison in Philadelphia. And at that prison, Edgar Allan Poe spent like a day there.
Flex.
And then one of the most notorious, like one of the first serial killers ever, H.H. Holmes, who amazing historical nonfiction book called The Devil in the White City. About the making of the Chicago Fair, while also telling the story about the serial killer, H.H. Holmes. That's where he got executed.
In Philly?
Yeah, he got executed at that prison in Philly. Like years later, or it might have been before, and he was hung. He didn't die immediately. His body's like twitching for like 15 minutes and shit. Like he had a brutal death, but he also killed mad people, so he kind of deserved it. Yeah, that prison had a lot of history and stuff. Yeah,
you never hear people who did mad time talk about people they went to jail with. Nigga, if I did 20 years, I'm definitely flexing on niggas that came through. Like, what? Nigga, I was there with Pac back in the day. Yeah. You know, we had a peanut butter jelly sandwich together. Like, what? That would be my story. Nigga.
Even when you do like little stints. Like, I remember Jordan Belfort in The Wolf of Wall Street. I think he shared, like, he was in prison with, like, was it Cheech or Chong? Like, one of them was in prison.
That's a flex for both of them.
It was weird. It was like, okay. Yeah.
Listen, this is weird. For me, if I had to go to jail 20 years, I ain't really got much to, you know what I mean? Because I was locked up.
Yeah.
I'm flexing on every superstar that came through. Like, oh, yeah, nigga, I was with Wayne. Yo, yeah, he was 3 cells down. I seen him. You know what I mean? But she did her first 3 months.
Yeah.
Comes home, right? And, of course, her family's not fucking with her now.
Yeah, yeah. She like kind of put shame on the family and stuff.
Yeah. So no surprise.
Which makes sense given like where they were at in society and stuff. Like they frowned down on that. You know what I mean?
They did frown down. It does make sense.
But it's also like if you have 9 kids, one of them gonna do something.
Come
crazy.
on, big dog. Like yo.
Somebody gonna do something that's gonna break shame with the family.
Time. You know what I mean? Like I already did 3 months. I can't.
And it's for still in a dress allegedly. It was like it's not like I shot a bunch of people or I drowned a nigga with an alligator in the lake and they chopped up his body. Like
3 months, and she had to be a minor. She had to be like 15, 16 at this point.
Yeah, well, it happened in 1884, so she was like 19, I think.
19? Okay.
If she was born in 1865.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's young.
I mean, 1880, I think that might have been middle age.
Yeah, 1984.
People were dying young
back then. He was an adult. Like, some people had like 3-4 kids.
Remember, there was a period where the lifespan for black people was like early 30s, man.
That's a fact.
Because remember, we weren't getting medical attention. We weren't, we had just various diseases and stuff.
Still, though, like culturally.
Diabetes was a low-key killer. No one knew about that. They didn't know about the sugars back in 1886. The sugars got you.
The sugars. You got the sickness. That's what it was called. The sickness.
It was like, what'd you do today? What gave you the sickness? Well, I just had some of them rinds and I had some.
It was those demons.
You mean the black eyed peas? So, yeah, she gets disowned by her family and ends up in New York, right?
Ends up in New York. Because, I mean, where else a Philly nigga going to go when they get thrown out, right?
How do you think she got to Philly got to New York from Philly? She took like a
horse and carriage, I'd imagine. Right? Either that or she walked, hitchhiked, maybe.
That's what I was wondering. I'm like, yo, in theory, you could have walked back then. And she had nowhere else to go.
She had nowhere else to go, yeah. And, you know, this is like 1865, so this is a tough time to be walking and moving around and shit.
Yeah.
I think there might have been railroad, maybe, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but, I mean, it all depends on whether or not she was actually able to get money and stuff like that.
So that's the interesting part, right? So she comes to New York and she ends up at a brothel, right? Big shout out to all my hoes. Can we say hoes?
I mean, we have a very female-centric audience, so they may not appreciate the verbiage.
But I'm a hoe. I mean, I don't say it to specifically talk about women.
When you say you're a hoe, what do you give your definition?
She's at a brothel. She's selling sex.
Yeah, sex worker.
A sex worker.
But when you call yourself a hoe, like don't deflect. When you call yourself a hoe, what do you mean by that?
I sell sex. No, I'm talking shit. But meaning like
You're promiscuous.
I'm promiscuous.
Okay.
I don't sell sex, but I definitely sex is a high priority for me, and it's one of my primary ways of making connections.
Okay.
So I don't leverage it for money. I leverage it for intimacy.
Yeah, you like having a good time.
I like having a good time. I mean, a lot of people like having a good time, but like I be outside.
See, when I hear a hoe, I think of someone who just is like promiscuous, but also doesn't give a fuck about hurting other people's feelings. Like if you hook it up with someone who catches feelings and you're just dismissive of it, that I think is like hoe behavior.
I feel like you're a hoe and an asshole if you do that. Like you can be a hoe, you can be two adjectives, a hoe and an asshole. Like somebody might be hoe-ish, but when I think about somebody being hoe-ish, I don't think they're being mean or dismissive. I just think they're floozy. They're running around, whether you're male or female.
Okay.
But now, if you're saying like, yo, this motherfucker's a dickhead and a hoe, now I'm like, oh, you be fucking and you're an asshole?
Folks, email us at officialdrunkblackhistory@gmail.com. Let us know what your definition of a hoe is, because I kind of get what you're saying, but that's also insane.
Yeah, well,
that's insane lot.
It's going to be a crazy day.
She was a sex worker in New York, and basically she gets a client, John Platt, right?
She does a sex worker, and where she worked at had the wild name to it too. That's what I was looking for.
Oh, you're trying to look up the name of the?
Yeah, it was like it was in Manhattan's. It was owned by Emmeline Truitt. And the building was called the Resort, and it was in an area called Tenderloin neighborhood.
Yep. It's from that ran from like 24th Street to 42nd Street between 6th and 7th Avenue. It was basically New York's red light district at the time.
And they called it Tenderloin neighborhood.
It's wild. And what's weird is like, because in New York now, like that's like through multiple different types of neighborhoods. You're talking Chelsea, Times Square, and then Midtown West, almost to Hell's Kitchen. It's like really interesting, the wide range of that district. So a lot of fucking, a lot of moaning, and probably a lot of crime.
Like, yo, where you headed? I'm heading to the Tender. I'm looking for something.
The Tender.
I'm looking for something warm and wet
Headed
tonight.
to the Tender.
Yeah. So John Platt,
Yeah.
who at the time is
He had a glass factory, right?
He had a glass factory,
Yeah.
correct, right? And has a relationships with Rockefeller and them. It has some money,
Some money.
They say he wasn't a millionaire, but he was like a high 100,000aire. You know what I mean?
I mean, that's what he ended up giving her over time. Like, so.
Well, and it's unfair when they say, because like he gives her, and not to fast forward, but he gives her some money and she invests.
Yeah.
So that money could have definitely.
Yeah, she invested in a lot of property.
Invested in a lot of property, and it could have like appreciated over time, because he was only worth himself. They said about like $900K. Like he was doing bullshit. They say he was making $900K a year. He wasn't making So
I mean, that's like
He's making
tens of millions of dollars.
Tens of millions. I'm bugging.
If not even more.
I'm bugging out. I'm bugging out.
In the 1860s and the 80s.
Yeah. He was getting money. That's for sure.
I mean, it also was like if he's able to, he probably got unlimited credit from the bank.
Oh yeah.
If you're making that kind of money back then, like you have a blank check basically, probably.
Pretty much. So he's walking. He comes in with his boys. Before he's married. And what's funny about it is the Resort is a brothel that specifically has young black women, right? So your boy had a flavor.
Oh yeah, because he got jungle fever. We got jungle.
I didn't see that movie for years.
Yeah, it's a weird movie, man. It's an intense movie, but whenever I think about Jungle Fever, it's not the movie. It's when Carlton sings Jungle Fever of the Fresh Prince. He's like, 'cause she got jungle fever. He got jungle fever. We're in love. That's one of my favorite. Like, it's such a funny. Anyways.
Yo. So your boy has some flavor.
Shout out to Alfonso Rivera.
A big shout out to him. Word. Yeah, your boy had some flavor. He wanted to go out there and hook up with some young girls, right? Particularly black ones.
Yeah. And remember, the one thing we didn't mention about Hannah is that she was very light skinned.
She was very light skinned.
At one point, she was passing for like Cuban and
right.
Indigenous, maybe like or white.
And this is after she makes her money, right? So her family was fair skinned. Her father claims to have Indian, Native American, and the family, indigenous, better yet, in the blood, right? I fucked it up. I'm going to tell you. We're
trying to be mindful,
right?
Of the language. You know what I mean? It's hard, but at least we try. That's where like I think this whole quote unquote PC woke shit goes off the rails a little bit. Is that the people people get so upset even when you're trying to put an effort into being like conscious of your language that you're using.
Right.
That's where I get turned off of it because I do try to be mindful of it, but then people still like give you a hard time. You're like,
I get it though.
I'm trying to learn. Like I'm trying to.
I get it because anytime somebody say nigga that not supposed to, I get upset every time. I never be like, oh, that nigga 75, he been around. No, fuck that old ass nigga. Who are you talking to? You know what I mean? Like, so I get it. You know, I don't want to be
found that
hypocritical.
they're like, you know, they don't even know where they are because they got dementia.
I don't care.
That's fair.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna get dementia and start calling people all types of wild names. Maybe
What if
I might.
What if you have dementia and you forget what race you are?
That's some serious dementia.
Yeah.
I've never experienced that.
Like there's an old. I'm not saying this white guy does this, but there's an old white man at my papa's assisted living. Like it's not even assisted living. It's like, you know, for people with dementia and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about like, what if he just because he's surrounded by black and Spanish people, if he just forgot he was an Italian dude and was just like nigga. Like,
It depends on what the energy that he's saying.
I guess.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah. That's a fair.
Because if he gets dementia and then thinks he's like an old, you know, black dude and is a white man and he's saying nigga with that Samuel Jackson tone, I might let it slide.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. But generally speaking, I understand. Just like, all right, let me do better with my words and try to say the right words. But her family was indigenous, had some indigenous blood in her, and she was very fair skinned, which is a very good point to make because John Platt is a white man in the 1860s.
Yep.
So he was very excited about seeing this fair skinned woman who, remember, comes from a very affluent family.
Yeah, so she probably took care of herself. She probably looked great.
Well spoken.
Yep.
She was classically educated, went to school, which wasn't a common thing. Mm-hmm. We're talking about 1865.
Yep.
So going to school and being educated was like, oh, you can read and write?
You could have conversations with her. That's probably, I wouldn't be surprised if he was like the client that she had the least amount of sex with. And he just liked the companionship. Because that happens a lot.
It does.
It happens a lot. People just sometimes want someone to talk to. And John Platt, I mean, he ran a glass factory. He probably is not the most engaging electric guy. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, you imagine he probably did not have, and this is 1865 where they were very like stush and conservative and kind of like mirrored old England and shit. So yeah, he's probably not having the conversation he wants to have. You know what I mean? With the people within his peers and shit. So he slides up to this spot, meets her. They start hooking up. You know, he's coming here on a regular. Fast forward, she's there for a little bit. She had a situation with a dude and from back in the day. And remember, she had just came out of jail. So the situation that she had with that dude, he came back to the crib. She wasn't there because her father said you can't come back. Yeah. So he goes to find her in New York with her brother. I think she had a twin brother, right? They convince her to leave the resort to come back to this broke ass nigga's house, right, in Philly, right? Yep. So she leaves there and goes back to Philly, and her and Platt's relationship kind of goes stale for a little bit. Has a baby with this dude. This nigga dips out when the baby is born, right?
Even at the 1800s, brothers were doing that.
Yo, niggas ain't shit, boy. I tell you, not all.
It was so easy to disappear back then, though. I mean,
listen,
you just go into the woods and niggas never
slide right off.
Yeah,
that was the original. I'm going out for cigarettes.
And it's not like you have ID. I just write a new name on this piece of paper here.
And that's it.
That's my ID.
Let me tell you, it's even worse, though, because he slides over to New York, right? So she has a baby. She can't afford it. No. She gives it up for adoption. No. You know, decides like, yo, I'm going to come after this dude. Finds him in New York working at some kind of like furniture store. Starts balking at him, wilding.
Yo, that's crazy that even back in the 1800s that shit was happening. Getting confronted. Imagine 1890 something. You're working at a furniture store like, yes, do you want this ottoman in red?
You motherfucker! You left me, you motherfucker!
I do not know that woman. Do you want to pay the 25 cents for this furniture? Or
don't ignore me!
Oh, God, I need this money.
You took me out of my situation!
Hannah, you have to stop. They're going to break my knees.
I'm gonna fucking kill you! So he ignores her the whole time, right? And she follows him to the crib. And when he gets to the crib, he calls the cops on her. Yeah. Police come.
She gets arrested.
She gets arrested, right? Yeah. Goes in front of the judge. And the judge is like, yo, explain the situation. She's like, yo, I had a baby for him. He disappeared on me. This nigga didn't even show up to the court. He sends a letter. Letter basically says these hoes ain't loyal. For the most part. You know what I mean?
A feather pen. Just
it was like the original joint.
Yeah.
I mean, what it literally said was that she's a commoner. She's a common woman. It translates, these lows. And so the judge saw it, was like, okay. Looks at her and says, listen, hits her with disorderly conduct and gets a month in jail behind that. Can you imagine? This nigga walked out on you, right?
Yep.
First of all, let's run it back. You having a good life. You got this nigga, sugar daddy, is paying your bills. You having a good time. Nobody's asking no problems. These niggas show up out of nowhere talking about, yo, XYZ. They convince you to leave your situation, carry your ass all the way back to broke-ass Philadelphia. You in New York doing your thing. You have a baby for this bitch-ass nigga. He disappears. You carry your ass all the way to New York.
Confront him.
He calls the police on you.
Yep.
And then you end up doing a month behind that shit.
And that don't show you how sexist this country is?
That's crazy.
Come on, man.
That's crazy.
Come on, man.
That's crazy. When I read that, I was like, wow.
Yeah, man.
That's crazy.
It's wild. So she goes to jail again, but she gets out.
She goes to jail, but she went to jail on this place called it's Roosevelt Island now, but it used to be called, I'm going to tell you right now. It used to be called, I thought it was really interesting. Roosevelt Island used to be a women's jail. It used to be called Blackwell Island, right? And it used to be a medium and max prison, right? Okay. And it had different floors, and they had a psych ward, and they would have murderers there, and the women's jail was like a section.
Yeah, it's a floor, right?
You know what I mean? Yeah, which I thought was like, cause now every time I drive by Roosevelt Island, I'd be like, damn, it used to be the old school Rikers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
It's crazy. So she gets out of jail, comes back out, hits the brothel. Now, what I thought was really ill, because they ain't had no text. It wasn't like she could hit the line and be like, yo, nigga, I'm back on the track. What's up? So it was none of that. So what they did, they put an ad. They had 2 pet names, right? So they would put an ad, let's say the pet name was like, Tommy Bear and whatever, right?
And Boo Boo Two Shoes.
Boo Boo Two Shoes. All right. So Boo Boo Two Shoes gets out. He puts an ad out. Yeah. And she's like, Boo, Tommy Bear, I'm looking for you. Where you at? Yeah. And then Boo Boo Two Shoes would put an ad out in the paper, basically saying, yo, I'm gonna be on here on this day at this time. And they had their own little language, and that's how they were able to find each other, which I thought was pretty ill.
That's wild,
right?
That's wild.
That's really cool. Like, cause you couldn't find them, so niggas read the paper every day. So let me just take out a little ad.
Damn. Yeah, man. That means that they like. You have to have some type of connection in order to have that as a signal, unless that was a common thing back then.
Well, they had their. It was something they already had pre-planned, where if they ever lost, because she was a street worker, so you gotta.
She would pop. Sometimes she would have to dip out. If some dude got a little too weird and stuff like that.
She had no cell phone. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's hard enough to keep track of these hoes with phones now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
Imagine back in the day.
That's actually kind of beautiful, man.
It really was.
That's actually kind of like, because it's so. I know so many people that get ghosted by people that they think they have a connection with and stuff like that, who are unresponsive. And to know that these people lost touch,
right?
And then they started putting ads in the paper to communicate with each other. It's a wild story what ends up happening, but that's actually kind of beautiful for a moment.
Yeah, that makes me think about it. If I ever lose track of somebody, drop a
nobody
little
gonna
ad.
read that ad, bro. You can pay for promotion on Instagram for that ad. They still
read it, right? Golly,
I'll be like, yo. Johan, what's up with that? What's up with that ad you posted?
I didn't see it. Like, you didn't listen to it? Nah. But I thought that was really cool. So they find each other again, and at this point, she's not in the resort anymore. She's staying at some tenement, and he lives on Millionaires Road, which is now Billionaires Road, right near Central Park. So I'd imagine he's married now too, right? So he's really creeping right now. He's on some real sleazeball shit.
Yeah.
So he's like, yo, I'm tired of coming to see you in this shithole. Yeah.
It makes sense, because why wouldn't he have just married her? It would have saved him so much aggravation that comes.
She black. He can't marry her.
But remember, she's passing at this point.
She passing, but she ain't passed.
She's passing, but it doesn't come out that she's actually black until the court drama starts happening.
Well, well, during that time period, yes. But there's a lot. The book fills it in, because and her niggas knew she was black. Her family was well known in Philly. You know what I mean? So it wasn't like, even when people started to find out that she was black, it spread over because people knew who she was.
So, question for you, because you read this book, because I read that there was rumors that she actually didn't really have black people around, because she didn't want her cover to be blown.
Yes.
Is that real?
That's much later. That's much later. So in this stage of her life, pretty much that's her sugar daddy. Yeah. So he's like, yo, I'm gonna pull you out the slums. I need to come see you in a safer space. So he puts her in a nicer like house, right? And he's giving her like $8,000 a month. But then he gives her $8,000 a month, which I thought was some real G shit. And he's like, yo, you can't take some of that bread and invest it. So he helps her buy bonds. Bonds were really big at the time. Stocks, and which is really special too, because if you think about it, in 65, like you couldn't just go out and buy it. There was no fucking Robin Hood. So you had to give your shit to a white man and hope that this white man did right by you. Yep. And if that white man took your money and said, hey, who the fuck are you, nigga? Like,
exactly, yeah.
That was it. It was a done deal. So
that's what I'm saying. There had to be some real affection between the two.
Like, he loved her. When you listen to the story as we go through it, like, there's no doubt in my mind. He was head over heels. But for me, it was more like a Thomas Jefferson. What's his side chick's name?
I don't remember. Thomas
was dating. I'm about to look it up now.
I just remember every time I hear Thomas Jefferson now, I just think of Daveed Diggs singing in a French accent, which isn't even Thomas Jefferson. That's the other character, Lafayette, he plays in the Hamilton. My mind's all scrambled. This show and the drinking, I'm just like all over the place. But
Sally Hemings.
Okay. That was Thomas Jefferson.
That was one of his enslaved women that he had a side piece with, and he would like.
But Hannah and Platt end up having a kid, right?
The kid passes away. Yeah. They do end up having a kid. But before we even get to that point, he moves her into the spot, right? So now he's paying her bills. She starts making investments because it's really important, because later on in life, this education that she gains under him is what really, when you talk about how she starts buying Harlem, she didn't have to go out. She didn't have to go and ask for help for that. She already had, an
idea of what to invest in.
What to do, and she already had contacts. Yeah. So it was just a phone call she made to say XYZ. She gets that
access, man.
She had access, but she gets that tutelage early on, in this like relationship that they have, right? So boom, he moves in. They start doing their thing. His wife dies. Now, when the wife dies, he kind of like wants to be with her all the time. You feel me? Like he's like, you ever seen the shit with Eddie Murphy?
Of course.
Just Harlem Nights?
Of course, yeah.
She's the one that had the golden pussy that flew up in the air. Because this nigga, as soon as the wife died, bro, she owned a tenement building. And she showed up to the tenement building like, yo, what's up? Like, it's me and you, sis. Right? So the book kind of doesn't, because they're using newspaper clippings, diaries, journals, to kind of like piece it together.
Public records, yeah.
So one day, and this is kind of like a thing to the story, right? So she's living in this thing. She's living in his home. He comes to visit her. A man that lives there opens the door. He don't like this white man coming to visit this lady. He probably wasn't getting no pussy and probably wanted it because it sounded like, you know what I mean? So he balks on John, right? And the people in the house tell him like who John is. And when Hannah comes back to the building, Hannah throws this nigga out like, yo, you can't stay here. Now, he's important because later on, when we come back to it, like he's like one of the reasons why she does get found out. So this shit happens for like years. They're like chilling in this crib, doing their thing. Eventually, he wants to move her closer to him, right? Because his wife passed away. So he buys her a place close to Billionaire's Row, right? And understand that, like, yo, she's a black woman in the 1880s living near Central Park, which is unheard of. So that's why when you heard like she had to like act like she wasn't black, because she literally just couldn't live in that area. You couldn't be a black person.
You weren't legally allowed to.
Yeah. They would have killed you. Like, so she had to fake it. Like, yo, I'm Cuban. Nah, I got a little Indian in the family. Like, whatever you had to do. You feel me? So
she had a Japanese butler.
And that was a flex too back then. The big flex was having a foreign help. Mm-hmm. So you was like, yo, when you had big money, you'd be like, yo, my butler's from Finland. Yeah. The Netherlands, baby. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
Like, my nigga from Queens, yo. I just can't afford it. You know what I mean? But, yo, she had a Japanese butler. So she moves to Billionaire's Row, which initially is like, dream come true, right? Because here we talking about person born in Philly, had to give her baby, sex worker, thrown away by her family, but comes from a good stock, so to speak, right? Because the family's well-to-do. finds this rich, wealthy white man. Well, the white man finds her, build a relationship, and a relationship good enough to now where she's on Billionaire's Row. And now, mind you, he's been giving her money, but she's also been making her investments. Like I said, she owned a tenement building that she was working. She had tenants and stuff like that, and it wasn't the only one that she owned. Amongst black folk in that area, she's known for being wealthy, right? Especially in New York. Yeah. So when she moves to Billionaire's Row, it's estimated at that point that she's making somewhere around $600K a year. Very close to Platt. Yep. And also probably either the richest or the second richest black woman in the U.S. The first one being Marianne Pleasant from California with that whole gold rush shit. So that's super dope. But at this point, because she's on
coast, baby,
coast to coast, right?
Biggie and Tupac,
Marianne and Hannah Elias.
Yeah, there you go,
2 titans.
Yep.
But at this point, the Billionaire's Row crib became a personal prison because here you are, you're a black woman in the 1880s. Nobody can know that you're black. So every time she leave the house like Michael Jackson. She got the gloves on, she got the mask on. You can't see it, right? She builds medical things in her basement so she can have a doctor's appointment and gyno and all that other shit in the basement, right? Because people can't know, what I really am. So she hires all these foreign folks. People initially thought she was Italian. Hired an Italian linguist. Shit got crazy. She fucked him. I don't know what you doing fucking to help. You feel me? But
he's probably a good looking Italian doctor.
Probably, and that pussy good. Yeah. So he lost his mind.
He was like, "Oh, this jumper's head." Well, that's French.
Listen, that is French. But he lost his mind. He started acting crazy. Pussy got to be amazing because every time she put it on somebody, these niggas is losing their fucking mind.
I'm gonna put him on her.
Listen. So she gets rid of him. And then people start to think that she's Cuban. That's when she does the Cuban thing, right? And rolls with that. But so you remember that dude that I told you that had the problem with John?
Yeah.
So this nigga's a little bonkers, right? And one day this nigga decides, out of nowhere, he still butthurt that she threw him out the tenement building. So he's like, "Yo, I'm gonna go out and find this," because John wasn't using his real name. He had an alias. So he's like, "I'm going to go find this Green person." Green was the alias. Andrew Green was the alias. And so he goes out and finds Andrew Green and shoots Andrew Green. But the Andrew Green that he found
was the real Andrew Green.
Yeah. Who, by the way, was a city planner that built Queens, Brooklyn, and mapped all that out and said, "We're going to do X, Y, Z." Yeah. Right? So when he killed this nigga, the city was on fire. You just killed the nigga that built the city. Yeah. You feel me? So
brought all the attention on Platt and...
Well... The cops start doing what they do, so they start doing the research to find out. But the cops didn't really tell on Platt. It was when the cops came to the house to ask questions, because Hannah Elias kind of dropped the ball too, because they go see Hannah, and they're like, "Yo, this nigga saying that a Green came to the house many years ago, you threw him out. What's the situation?" And she's kind of like, "Well, what he's saying is not 100% true. The Green was the alias. The actual name is John Platt." I'm just like, why you dropping bombs on that shit? We could have just been like, "Nah, he lying, he crazy." Because they were going to give him insanity anyway, because the boy was off his rockers. Yeah. You know what I mean? But she drops a name on him. So they go out and ask John, "Hey, John, Hannah." Mind you, the cop is like, "Yo, you a black woman on Billionaire's Row? But okay, we not, all right." Yeah. This Hannah saying that you did X, Y, Z. John confirms it. He's like, "This is true. We did have an affair for many years. At this point, his wife is dead, right? But even him having an affair with a black woman would have been scandalous."
Yeah, absolutely. All the country.
So rich as he was too, I mean, he's running around with the Carnegies and Rockefeller and all that. You feel me? So he's like, "Yeah, I did, but can you keep my affair out the paper?" Cop was like, "Cool," right? They end up giving the guy, I think his name was William. They put him in the mental house, right? But at the time, the family was there. So when the family heard. Family was like, "Oh, hold up.
Exactly. Yep.
You gave her how much? She lives where?"
Yep.
And the family they were going to inherit. Mind you, John met her. The book says that he met her in his 60s. You know what I mean? So he must have been.
Yeah, he was like 40 years her senior.
He was 40, yeah. So he met her in her 60s, and then his wife passes away. Yeah. Maybe and it said he wasn't married at first. When he first met her, he got married, and then that wife passed away, right? Somewhere how they tell it.
Yeah, and I'm sure his family, his like, you know, and then her family were probably like, "Yo,
Right.
you giving away this money and giving it to a Negro."
You
know, exactly. It's
that
just
was the worst part. It was that she was a black woman,
Yeah.
right? Because now not only you giving away the money, which could have been a thing, but you're giving away to this black woman, which is like, you know, atrocious, right? So boom. So the family sues. You know, initially, no bullshit. Initially, they sue because she was married too. That's the other part. Like, so when her and John are going back and forth, she had got married, and her husband sued John. You know, but John settled it for $500 and was like, yo. Then the husband was like, I need 20 bands so I don't tell nobody. He gave that bread. But then the husband's family sued her and said that you
blackmailed them.
Yeah, you embezzled money out of the thing. Long story too long, when they show up to court, John has, like, he totally forgets. They're like, did you do X, Y, Z? He's like, I don't remember. Did you know? I know her, but she didn't do none of the things that you talked about. So she gets off. But mind you, now her secret is out. Everybody knows she's black. Yeah. Everybody knows she's on Millionaire's Road. They're protesting. They're trying to kill her. This was big news, right? Especially while she had the embezzlement case going. It was big news. So after all that happens, the family tries to get money out of her. She wins in court. Bing, bam, boom. She ends up leaving that area of Billionaires Road, right? Yeah. And the book kind of like goes into a little bit of detail about there's another person in Harlem. At the time, Harlem was predominantly white lived. Black folk lived in Brooklyn and in the Village, right? And if you wanted to live above 125, above 113, it was, for a black person, it wasn't heard of, right? So a person named Philip A. Payton Jr. owned a company named Afro American Realty, right? He was a real estate developer, and he got together with other like well-to-do black folk, including Hannah Elias, and Hannah actually started purchasing buildings out there. Now, what's notable is that she evicts white folk.
Yep.
Tells these niggas, get the fuck out.
Yeah, she said these places are not meant to be occupied by anyone besides, like, basically black folks or people of color in a way, yeah.
Which is a super flex. In 1901, 1902?
But unfortunately, it's reversed now.
Yeah.
But, you know what I mean? But,
yeah.
But it was a big deal back then. You know, she was part of the foundation of what is Harlem.
Absolutely. She buys those buildings, and then just a few years later, you have, you know, the Harlem Renaissance. Yeah. I mean, a lot of folks, and then the book kind of ties it in by saying when she bought those properties in Harlem, also the other well-to-do black people in the country saw that as like, oh, we got a movement going on over here. Let me go over here and buy some property and move and X, Y, Z. And that kind of pulls black people from all over the country to be like, Harlem's a new Mecca.
And it also helps create generational wealth, which I'm sure she was educated on, which is, you know, because back then investing in New York, I mean, those houses now are worth tens of millions of dollars.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so it's like, if you were able to get in the ground floor as black folks, I mean, that takes care of generations.
And property ownership was really big deal for black people back then.
Of course.
Right? Yeah. Because they didn't own much prior to slavery, prior to slavery. So having that property ownership was a big deal. And I like to see that change today because I feel like we've moved away from feeling that need to buy and own land where like we'll rent more today. But it was such a big thing for us culturally.
Well, it's also, you know, the stress, and I don't even call it trauma, but there is some trauma there. Of redlining,
right? Of
being, you know, because if you don't have a good, steady paying job that allows you to qualify for the loans that help you pay your mortgage,
right,
or to get a mortgage, you know, you can only take so much. Some people can only take so much rejection, and you know, it's even worse if you maybe have a criminal past or things like that. And it's just tough for people that don't already have like money, or don't already come from money. You know what I mean? And also, like, if you're navigating that and you're not really educated on the real estate market and stuff like that, like, I have a real estate license, and even for me, like, being first time home buyer was incredibly intimidating. Like, you don't know what you don't know and stuff like that. It
is very intimidating. And I think, like, you know, you can come in. Home buying has many levels to it, right? So if you work at McDonald's, maybe you're going to get a $50,000 condo. That's in your budget, so to speak, right? A 3-bedroom house is outside of your budget. But it's so intimidating, and that people become so overwhelmed by it that for a lot of us, we're missing that boat, right? And you know, our ancestors, whether you're from the Americas or from the Caribbean, whatever, if you're part of that group that left West Africa, like our ancestors fought for us to be able to get to this space, be able to do these kind of things, right? And if you're right now today, like if you think about 64, you had to deal with segregation. 80s, you had to deal with the niggas that was alive in 64 that did it. The 90s, they niggas started dying. But by the 2000s, the new niggas came in, and that the idea of you being that kind of racist is kind of changed now. Now in 2024, certain things are kind of outrageous.
You're right.
You feel me? So we have the best opportunity, considering, 100 some odd years later, talking about Hannah Elias, to be able to do what she did and find ways to contribute, to give back.
Appreciate you bringing Hannah Elias' story to the light for our audience and for me as well. What, and in closing, what would you say? Well, actually, I have two questions before we wrap up. One is, why do you think people don't know about Hannah Elias?
Because she's a woman and she's black. Primarily because she's a woman. The black is just a spice on top. But a lot of people hate black people, but they definitely hate women out here. That's like...
And women that are rich.
Add whatever adjective you want to it. Woman that is, they don't like it.
I mean, she literally is independent. She didn't need John Platt after a certain point.
No. And then I would argue that John Platt gave her the access. She had the brain to make it happen. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, she had to take the things that he was telling her and like put it into action.
Put it into use.
She could have easily been like, okay, whatever.
And got some chains and she did the CJ Walker, just went out and bought man shit. You know what I mean? But she built an empire. So I have to applaud her for that, And I'm somebody that wants to duplicate. So I like to look at that era to be like, yo, how did you guys do it?
Yeah. And so that leads me to my last question is, what do you think, what should be the biggest takeaway for the audience about Hannah Elias?
If Hannah Elias could do it, you can, for whatever that means for you in your life. When we look at these stories of people that struggled, and you could be like, yo, for every one person that made it, there was 20 that didn't. That's true. And those 20 people put all their energy into that one person for that one person to persevere. That's how we made this far, right? And we're in a space right now, capitalist dream is not for everybody, right? But whatever you're trying to do in life, when you look at these previous stories and and how far we've come as a people, bro, this is a hell of a movie. Like, if you really play it, if you play it from, we don't know where it's going, but if you look at, we are snatched from the land, brought to a place, separated from our lineage and our education, and then had to fight our way through that to be accepted in that land. The first person to die for the American Revolution was Crispus Attucks, black man. You feel me? So it's like at every level we're dying and putting up effort to make it happen. Yeah. And today we are the answer. We are the result of 500 years of oppression. Like, our ancestors put blood, sweat, and tears for us to be able to sit on this mic and be bullshit and not worry about KKK coming through the door trying to wipe us out. Yeah. So we owe it to them, even if you don't do nothing. That doesn't mean that you have to go out and produce. Because I think production is a part of that American enslavement thing, right? Yeah. But you owe it to them just to be alive, to be great, to be healthy, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. To have choice. And if you choose to not do nothing, and be happy about it. Because many of folks didn't have the ability to do that. And if you choose to do something, go out there and be great. Don't let nobody stop you and make you feel like, yo, you can't do it, because your ancestors did it with less.
Absolutely.
You feel what I mean? So that's just my biggest takeaway. That's why I keep reading these stories, because it makes me feel good inside. Like, you know what? If they can do it like that, you can put these Legos together and go build this shit.
That's awesome, man. We didn't even talk about the fact that at a certain point she just was like, I'm outie, and went to Europe with her Japanese butler and just lived out the rest of her days.
Yeah, after World War I, and then, a testament to the racism that was in the U.S., right, was so crazy that it was like, I just might as well go to Europe. You know what I mean? Because at least I could be able to walk the streets, and do X, Y, Z.
James Baldwin did it.
And Josephine Baker, I believe. Yeah. She moved to Europe.
Oh, yeah, she went
out of here.
She was a spy and shit. She did all kinds of crazy shit.
She was a spy?
Yeah, she low-key was working for the government. It was a whole thing.
Oh, I gotta go check that out.
Yeah. Her story is wild. But bro, thank you so much for doing this podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Please tell the people how they can follow you on social media and all that stuff. Keep up with Conceitednobodi.
If you like my bullshit, follow me on Conceitednobodi, CONCEITEDNOBODI. It's on my shirt here. Johan the American. It's spelled the way it's said. Yep. Each and every Wednesday for 2 hours, you can keep listening to me spew my bullshit. Holla at me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And folks, you remember you can follow the show at official Drunk Black History on all social media platforms. You can follow me at Frodo_Blackens on Instagram and Threads. And we got some dope news coming out about Drunk Black History. So be sure to check out drunkblackhistory.com for upcoming show dates and some dope announcements. And as always, shout out to LV Pro Film House for letting us use their studio. Shout out to the team. Shout out to Toro over there on the ones and twos for the video. And we will talk to y'all soon. Peace.
Thanks for having me. Nigga, it's hot as a motherfucker in here, bro. these lights. Hey, thanks for having me.
Scene 1, take 3.